Another thing that's more common these days than it was in the past is mobile desktop management. And as far as this book is concerned, they're dealing specifically with laptops. But if you think about it, mobile can also include things like pagers and cell phones and other devices now that have a little bit of computing capabilities built into them, run software. My PDA, if I work for a company, I want them to be responsible for updating the PDA's operating system and/or applications on a regular basis. So these are the categories then that would be analyzed that are, again, the data that we want to track using our mobile MIF. So we're still talking desktop database format, MIF. So things like battery levels, docking status, infrared ports, video display types, pointing devices, and the device bays. So that's kind of looking at the hardware configuration as well as what their latest status is, especially with battery levels and docking status. Under the heading of configuration management, we need to have certain things in place that will make the whole management process more efficient. And one example is what we were just talking about, the remote software installation. In order for that to work, single sign-on is a big aspect of that. Back in the days of work groups, where each individual room usually was just a work group of computers, your log-on with a particular computer didn't work with any other computer. And then every time you went to a different system, maybe a web-based mail system that the company uses, or any other type of system that you had to go outside of your desktop and access, you needed to have a different username and a different password. Or more likely, it was potential that you could have been using a different username or password. So, you had to remember all these passwords, you had to remember all these usernames, and which one went with which system. So the idea of single, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as universal sign-on, is the fact that we can get access to all of the resources within the corporate-wide network by just logging on to one system. So some of the things that have come up, we've talked a little bit about this in previous classes. Directory services now has been a big addition that has, within the Microsoft and Novell world anyway, given us that capability. Microsoft calls their directory services AD, or Active Directory. Novell calls theirs NetWare Directory Services, or NDS. So that's now a dedicated server that handles the authentication of all access within the network, instead of each individual component doing its own authentication process. We also want to be able to utilize what is referred to as policy-based management tools. In the Microsoft world, and this is pretty true in most of the high-end networks these days, they use what are called GPOs, or Group Policy Objects. Again, we're talking about databases here. So we can control your access rights, what you can do on the system that you're working on. We can control what applications start up automatically when you log into the system. We can control the background color on your desktop. We can control corporate approved screensavers. We could even put the corporate logo on every desktop, have that pushed out from a centralized server. We can deny user access to the network if their virus checking isn't turned on, or if their license metering is disabled. And we can prevent users from installing programs on their computers as well. This room is a great example of that. In this room here, you can only do certain things on these computers, and that's because from a centralized server, we've sent out group policies to all of these computers, which basically configures the database, the registry on each one of these computers, so that it has certain functionality but limits you to other aspects, other components that you may want to do, other activities, tasks that you may want to perform, like installing software on these computers here. So we didn't have to manually come in and do that individually on each computer. We just sent that out through software over the network, and it hit each one of these computers, and it configured each computer to be exactly the way that the administrators would like these things to be locked down and prevent you from being able to have access to. but still giving you a certain amount of functionality, like cruising the internet while I'm lecturing.